Reparations for African Americans here in California. There's a 9-member task force that is seated and sets to start meeting on June 1st. What are your thoughts on reparations for African Americans?
Oh, well, I think I've supported 100% because we built this country and weren't paid for it. You know, we were brought here, turned into slaves, my people, and we worked. We did a lot. We did everything. We did the agriculture in the South. We picked the cotton. I know my people did in Texas. We picked the cotton. We built Washington. We built this country. We also helped build the railroads.
So one, I think I appreciate that you coming. We are not so that was right. I was easy. And then also CJEC also awesome. So once again, what is going to be super almost like really about which is a new thing, right? A new thing where I just really started. So one for the spaces, right? It's a lesson. It's a lot of ideas. Then we have people who go back to it. Everybody's doing something. So I was thinking, but I want to really focus on and I was doing, I think, roll with the first slide for and the cool thing about that is there is some time. I mean, also, you can so
we're stretching it on the slide.
So this is what I look at saying, but everything that we do every day will also send to you. You know, the pretty cool. And about it now, a newsletter coming out with all African task force. So don't feel like we need to. I'm here to I work with no but that right through this nothing. And so you can go back on my slides. So how do you guys get involved in this process? Like this work. So back in 2019, we probably have where I was following going on with the conversation about operations nationally. It's like a big conversation on that operations. So in that process, we actually got word that some of the you know anything about doing some operations bit, right? And so we went to talk about that, and we found out that there was something going on. Reparations Task Force. We actually started our work getting connected to the task force back in 2019, in May or June of 2019. So we've been on this for a while. And I'm just giving my team a shout out here. So what we were really successfully able to do was one, obviously track and follow what was going on. We were also able to help get the actual law that created the task force actually passed. We were organizing, we were at community meetings, we were at hearings, we were at community events, we were doing all the things that we needed to do to make sure that people knew about the task force and also that the task force itself, would ultimately get to the right kinds of what we think are the right kinds of reparations outcomes. Right? So, just a little bit of background on how we got involved in this. Don't want to talk too much because really this is about your thoughts and your questions and your ideas, right? So, without further ado, I think my slide is ready back here. So just one quick overview of what's going on with the Reparations Task Force, right? Just a basic fact sheet, a basic set of facts, some things you actually absolutely need to know about this task force, right? So the first thing is that there is a task force, okay? Right? In California, created a task force in 2020. The task force held its first meeting on June 1st of this month, okay? So if you go back to the law itself that created the task force, the law itself said, we're gonna create this task force, and the task force has to have their first meeting by June 1st, 2021. They took all the time they needed, okay, all right, and had their first meeting on June 1st, 2021. The task force the California Reparations Task Force has 9 members. 5 of those members were appointed by the governor. 2 of those members were appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly, and 2 of those members were appointed by the leader of the California Senate. How did that happen? That actually was in the law. The law actually said, this is who picks who's on the task force. This is who is going to be able to pick who gets on this Reparations Task Force, and this is how they have to pick it, basically. So 9 members. We have a pretty cool picture here for you. I want to thank the California Residents Health Project for making this graphic. So this is my Instagram repost picture because I did want to give them credit. So these are the 9 members of the task force right here. You are looking at really good looking people, right? So we got Chair Camilla Moore, Vice Chair Dr. Ames Brown. You've got Assembly Member Reggie Jones Sawyer. You've got Senator Stephen Bradford, who we just saw in like a little bit of a preview clip. Right? You've got Don Tamaki. You've got San Diego, I was going to get ready to say Sacramento, San Diego City Council Member Monica Montgomery Steph. Cheryl Grills. We've got Lisa Holder. I would say last but not least, we've got, I believe that's Dr. Javon Scott Lewis as well. So those are the 9 members of the California Reparations Task Force. This is a live picture actually from the first California Reparations Task Force meeting. So this is exactly how it looked, and this is each one of the task force members. Task force has 2 years total to complete their work. That's what the law says. I just had a good question from someone about, do they have to take the full 2 years? I want to answer that in Q&A, so somebody can ask me. Do they have to take 2 years to do what they are supposed to do? What are they supposed to do with them, right? We'll talk about that in 1 second. The last thing to say about this is there'll be at least 10 meetings prescribed by the law, so at least 10 meetings. The first one already happened, right? The second one we expect to be in July. We don't have a date yet. Okay? So make sure you sign up for our newsletter, which we'll talk about in a little while, because that's where we're going to be sending out information. As soon as we get it, we will share it out. The California Reparations Task Force also has a landing page / website also. So you can go to their website and sign up for their newsletter as well. You can see videos as well of the task force meetings. And again, we'll be sharing all that information out in the newsletter that we're going to send out. So what is this task force supposed to be doing, right? There is a lot of talk about this in the law, but there's 3 broad things. Right? First is study and collect evidence for reparations with a focus on California's role. Okay? So that's the first job, right? Collect evidence, tell the story, study the issue. The second job is to find ways to educate California about what they find, right? We are going to be a part of an education process, not just for us. A lot of us know a lot of what the case is for reparations and why we want reparations and need reparations. But that's not everybody, right? You know, this is a pretty big state, right? So educate the public, and then the thing people like the most, I think, is this one. It's the last one. People want to just do that last one, right? Develop the reparations proposals. Develop the remedies. Yeah, we know the what, we know the story. What you gonna do about it, right? That's the job of the task force. Okay? One of the jobs. Okay? Figure out what are the reparations proposals, what should be done now that we've studied and done all that stuff. So that's a basic overview overview of what is involved with this task force. Okay? Two questions here on the side of this fact sheet that I want to put to you because they are a part of what we've been thinking about in terms of how we're going to be working to hold the task force accountable. So our work doesn't stop when there's a task force. Our work didn't stop when the task force started. Right? We have taken it upon ourselves now to say we want to be involved in the process going forward. We want to really do two things. First thing we want to do is help ensure that this task force is open and responsive to community voices. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing we want to do is help ensure that the task force actually gets to the right types of reparations proposals. Okay? So that is the majority of our work now, is one, helping make sure that this task force and this process over time is open, is transparent, that your voices are involved. One reason why we're doing this community meeting and we're doing a bunch of these is to bring this task force to the community itself. Right? And this is one of the ways in which we want to help ensure that the task force is open and responsive to community voices. And lastly, or secondly, we want to help ensure, like I said, that the task force actually gets to the right types of reparations proposals, and we can talk about what the right types are. Right? And I'm really interested to hear what you think about those things too. So the question is really just one: do you think the California Reparations Task Force should be open and responsive to community voices? If so, how? And then, what should or does reparations look like to you? This question to put on your mind for now. Okay? What does reparations look like to you? What do you think about when you think about reparations? Okay? So I want to stop there and open it up to questions about anything you've heard, broader questions about reparations. I think we're gonna have to talk about at some point what we mean by the word reparations, right? Because when I said I think one thing, you said you think one thing, you said, we may have five different understandings. They may all be similar, but we're at a point now where we are going to be wanting to be more clear about what we mean when we say reparations, not just, an idea of it, but actually can you give me some concrete things, right? So that's the fact sheet. That's the basic overview. Really, this is the community just to give you some facts and then get questions in and get some feedback from you. So one question, yeah.
So I was wondering, on 3B where it says find ways to educate the public about its findings, will that have anything to do with maybe going towards the schools or colleges to kind of get information out to the kids?
So that's a good question. The question is, if folks couldn't hear, one of the jobs of the California Reparations Task Force is to find ways to educate the public about what it finds out, right? So your question is, could that involve, should that involve schools, education, curriculums?
Yeah.
And the answer, the short answer is yes.
Oh, okay.
That's what it could, and if you ask me, it should involve. And that's something that we want to discuss with the task force when they're making decisions about how to put together the education plan. Do we need to put some materials into every single curriculum in the state of California before we even get to the end of 2 years? Can we start here? Right? There are probably a bunch of ways in which we can work to educate the California public, but starting with the schools and starting young, I think is one idea that I think they really should consider. And I'm glad you said that, because this is why we're doing this. We can get those kind of good ideas. Any other questions about anything we've talked about with respect to the task force? Any questions about reparations that you have generally about the task force, or just about reparations? Yes.
My question is, there's a lot of chatter on social media about this task force being a state opposed to the national.
Mm-hmm.
What are your feelings? I don't see why it can't be both. So how are you handling that when you get all these naysayers that, we shouldn't do state, we should just focus on national level?
Good question. I love that question. The question is, so there is a lot of discussion out there about what's going on with California Reparations Task Force, because this is the first of its kind in the nation. Okay? We've not done something like this as a country before, and there are cities, there are schools and colleges that are trying to do similar things. For example, the big example is in Evanston, Illinois right now, where the city has like a $10 million reparations plan actually, put money up front and then broke, $400 grand up from it to put into some housing programs. Actually facing some resistance right now by the Black residents. Right? The Black residents themselves are resisting some of that. Okay? So the question though is, how do we balance, or how do we deal with the fact that some people are more, they don't want us to do state reparations, they want us to do federal reparations first, right, or before we do state reparations, and that there's a chance and a risk that the state level reparations and the local level reparations will somehow undermine, somehow hurt the federal national effort. That's the gist of the question. That's the gist of what I hear. There is a lot of validity to that argument. Okay? That is something that we have to be thinking about. We have to be careful about. It's a huge risk. And it's one of the reasons why, as a matter of fact, in our work, we had added to the law that created the task force, we had added a section, I think it's section 6, that says, don't use this, don't try to use this, don't you dare use this to preclude or in place of any federal reparations effort. So state of California cannot use this as a way to stop or not do federal reparations. So that was one of the reasons why we were fighting really hard to get that in the bill, and we got that in there, right? But the risk is still there, right? So I want to say a couple of things about this, and then I do want to see what you think about it too. So one, there's risk. Two, there's also huge opportunity. Okay? So I think that we have the chance with these local efforts to actually add momentum to what's going on at the federal level. We have a chance if we do this correctly. And I think, to be honest with you, we're off to a really good start. Okay? So it's not necessarily the case that these local efforts must take away from the federal effort. But what we do want to do is make sure that they don't. Right? So one thing we want to do is, I think when we get to the proposals part, please, brother, when we get to the proposals part, right, we want to make sure that we're talking about these and talking about the ideas in a way that doesn't do anything to give anybody an excuse who doesn't want to do federal reparations an excuse to do it, right? Because that's the big risk, right? It's, hey, there are a lot of people who don't want us to do this, who don't think it's needed, don't want it to happen, right? So we don't want to give them any excuse. We don't want them to say, well, it's a state's issue. Let's our state's handle it. The states by themselves cannot afford the actual bill that is going to be the reparations bill, right? This is only going to be afforded by the federal government, and it's ultimately the federal government that was ultimately responsible for what happened to us, right? The states had a big role. Local governments had a big role, private parties had a big role, businesses had a big role, but ultimately, nothing gets done in this country if the federal government doesn't say it's okay to do it, right? The federal government has the ultimate authority over what happens over our laws. Obviously, our laws are governed by the Constitution, right? So that's why we place the bulk of the responsibility on the federal government. What we want to do, though, is use these opportunities to add momentum to push the federal government to do the reparations program in the big way. There's going to be ways that we can do that, and I definitely want to hear any ideas about how we could do that better, right? In terms of not creating more risk for the federal effort. I think one of the things we can do is work with, like, if there's different local efforts going on around the country, which there are, then maybe that can be coordinated, maybe there can be more of an organized way, right? So that way we're talking, we're all on the same page, and we're all speaking the same language, right? But that's a really good question, and I'm just curious, what are your thoughts about that? Like, what do you think? Like, what do you think about that when you hear that you know, we shouldn't be doing the state stuff, we should just focus on the federal?
Well, I think everybody's complicit in our oppression, and I don't see why not that we can't do both, you know, because locally we're still here, although the overall picture is national, but things have happened to us locally that they must be transformed and acknowledged. So, yeah, I'm for both.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Any other thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that. So like, that raises another thought in my mind about how the city of Sacramento just put out in the news a couple days ago how the mayor is looking to do a study on reparations for Black folks. And I'm just like, okay, so how does that, when you talk about working together, how does that look with other cities in the state or with the statewide task force and the federal level? Like, what conversations are having? Are they in silos or are they collaborating together? Or, you know what I mean? So just thinking on that, in that vein, like, how can that, you know, be beneficial instead of something that hinders the greater effort?
Yeah. Well, let me take a stab at that, because what you're talking about, that's even really big news, right? So the city of Sacramento, I think the mayor of LA too, joined what they call the MORE coalition, the Mayors Organized for Reparations and Equity. So it's a new mayoral coalition. I believe there's mayors from all around the country that are involved in it. And actually this last week, the city of Sacramento also adopted a resolution that Kim authored actually. Kim actually wrote the resolution that Sacramento adopted that recognized the state's task force, right, and the state's reparations effort, and then also acknowledge the work of regular folks here in Sacramento for actually making it happen. So one, congrats, Kim. She had her resolution passed unanimously last week. So that is, so one, shout out to Kim. Now, there is more collaboration, less siloing of the different efforts that are going on here in the state of California. There's less conversation going on between groups across the country. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that there are people who are working very hard to change that, and who are working very hard to put voices of the different local groups together. And one thing to say about the national reparations effort that's going on right now too, because you mentioned it, and I do want to, I think you mentioned it too, and I do want to just point out that we are at a place right now where we haven't been this close to the passage of a reparations bill since the Civil War, to be honest with you. And that is because of how far the National Reparations Commission did, which we call HR 40, and its twin bill S40 in the Senate. And those bills are nothing like that's ever gone this far. It's on its way right now to, we expect sometime, possibly even this summer, a floor vote or a vote by the House, so all 435 members of the House of Representatives, possibly this summer, will, if the Democrats put it on the floor, they have to put it on the floor, but if and when they do, all 435 members of the House will have a chance to vote on it. Never have we had that kind of legislation get that far. Now, just in full disclosure, there are some big improvements that we think must happen with that national bill. There are at least 3 or 4 areas that we think we can make it a lot better. And we're going to be working to do that. We have been working really hard to do that. But that's not to take away from the history that we are all standing in right now. This is a window of opportunity. And I think we want to take it. All right, let me stop talking and get more questions, feedback, comments. Any more questions about, yes, sir?
Yeah, do you think it'll be easier to So for the national conversation, I think it's gonna be very difficult to try to get reparations passed, due to the Republicans, Mitch McConnell specifically. So I'm thinking, would it be easier to just try to get a majority in the Senate versus trying to convince, to be honest, Trump supporting Republicans that reparations is a good idea? Because Mitch McConnell's last statement on it was, not one person alive today owns slaves or were a slave. So if that's the case, then what's the purpose of reparations? That was his way to say, what's the point? No one owns a slave that's alive today, no one was a slave that's alive today. So that conversation should have happened in the past, disregarding the generational curse of slavery. So that's where they are. So my thinking is, why are we trying to have a national conversation with those folks who clearly aren't interested in it? Why don't we just take the majority of the Senate? Which we have a majority now, but we need more to stop this filibuster. Right.
No, good. So good point. I'm gonna repeat the question. So the question is about one. There is a national effort for reparations going on, but we obviously have people who don't want that to happen. And I'm saying people don't want that because some of the people are also in the Democratic Party. And so we have a double problem. Okay, right? So, but the question is, why not, why not focus on changing the composition of the Congress so that way at the national level, it's easier to get the bill passed, right? And the answer is, that is exactly what I think has to happen. Because I'm only going from here. In my mind, there's two things that are going to have to happen before we get to a place where I think we're almost 100% certain to get a bill passed. Two things that happen. One, we have to have more support from the public. Okay? Right now, there's not public support enough for reparations, even if we love HR 4, even if we love S4, even if we didn't have commission study bills, we just had the actual proposal bills, right? Even if we love them, we don't have the public support for any reparations. So part of our work is going to have to help build that, right? Part of what we do. Second thing is what you said. We have a problem with the people who are in Congress. It's not enough of them specifically support reparations. So someone got to go. Well, someone got to be have their minds changed. Okay? Either way, we have to get to a place where there's a majority of people in Congress who support what we support. Right? So, from my mind, there's at least two things that are going to have to happen before that. One is the public support, and one is doing what you're saying. And I know for a fact also that there are people who are very focused on that right now. But those efforts are going to take some time. Right? They're not going to take decades, but they will at least take, I think, the next couple of years. And I think we're at least in store for at least another 2 years of building public support and also, working to change Congress. Obviously, we have midterms next year, right? All 435 members of Congress are up for re-election next year, right? As they are every 2 years. A third of the Senate is up for re-election next year as well. So we have multiple opportunities, right? But you got to build enough power to do what you're saying. Yeah. And we are in the building phase right now. Yeah.
With that question, are there in Georgia, there's Tamara Johnson. So I'm just wondering, do we have candidates like that in our? Yeah,
I'm in Canada. No, good question. I'm sorry.
No, just like in our area. That's what I'm wondering.
So, one, I know Tamara's a friend of mine. Tamara Johnson Sheedy, by the way, who is I think she ran for state senate in Georgia, and then she ran for U.S. Senate last year in Georgia. I believe she just re-announced that she's running. She's going to primary Warnock.
Chris, can you repeat the question so the audience?
Yeah. So the question is, are there candidates who are actively supportive of reparations like Tamara Johnson Sheedy in Georgia, here in California, here in Sacramento? So there are not any candidates running for office that I know of that have publicly expressed an open, position on reparations. So that's just me personally. I haven't seen it yet. I don't put myself on the spot here, but we do have a candidate for office, District 5, second District Council.
Yeah, so I haven't officially made any announcement.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, the audience would like you to extend the mic to our
Yes,
speakers.
if that's okay. I think it should be able to reach.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, I just want to
Appreciate
say
it,
this
thanks.
for clarity, appreciate the, comment and the question. So I haven't made any official, announcement or formal announcement. I do plan to run for Sacramento City Council, but that's something that's still in the works. It's not official. I haven't pulled any papers or anything like that yet. Just trying to work on that planning phase, but that is my intention, my desire, when the time comes. I'm sure there will be a large announcement, and obviously, absolutely, 100% support reparations for African Americans and Black folks, descendants of slaves. So just want to make sure that that's known, you know what I mean? And where I stand on my square firmly and proudly as a Black man, third generation from Oak Park. And so it's it's mandatory for me to make sure that I'm looking out for people whose voices have been not heard or overlooked or just, pushed to the margin. So absolutely. But yeah, thank you very much for the question.
Yeah, no, and so thank you, Mr. Cartwright, who has not officially announced, and is obviously doing the right thing, right, by being in his community and actually talking to his people. I think one of the most important things that the brother said, though, that he is 100% supportive of reparations, right? And so how do we get to where you want to go to, right? Part of it is making reparations important enough to us voters, right? To say, hey, listen, when I'm looking at candidates from now on, if I don't have an open public position from you saying you support reparations for Black folks, then you cannot have my vote, right? That's one way we get there, right? And again, that's going to take us continuing to do the kind of political education that we're doing now, right? But it's also going to take us building our own candidates and grooming our own candidates, right? That's got to be a part of it too. We're going to have to run our own candidates to make sure that we actually get the kind of people that we want, and specifically those who support reparations.
Yeah, so most of the individuals that are supporting reparations are Democrats, honestly. So if that's the case, why don't we figure out a way to make reparations a policy that the party adopts formally through the state party system?
So I'm glad
that's the
you're
fastest way to make it a national, at least a statewide conversation, but now it's a policy that we support.
Yeah. No, please, because I was looking.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, we have the delegate system works, we have everyone, the local parties in the counties, they get elected to the state delegation, and the state delegations vote on policies. So if you get enough people locally, like the city council members or just regular delegates, to support a policy, it becomes a state policy that the party adopts. And that for me is an easy way to make it and bring it to the national conversation, especially as being one of the largest state in the country.
Right. No, and you're right. And also California is, I think the California Democratic Party is probably the largest Democratic party outside of the national Democratic Party.
We're the fifth largest economy in the world, so we have a lot of resources.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a really good idea. And just let me so I can repeat it. So the idea is, or the question is, and idea is, why not work to get reparations and support for reparations on part of the state Democratic Party's platform, right? As a way to also influence what's happening at the national level. That is a great idea, right? And that's one of the things that I think we actually want to do. Right? There's going to be part of the way that we're going about this work too is we work in a way that community focused and that community centered way. So the first people that we're going to, and I didn't speak about this when I talked about those two problems, but inside that first part of the problem, or that first thing that we have to do, which is build public support for reparations, right? I want to draw a circle around that because inside there's black folks and there's non-black folks, right? We also have work to do to bring this to our own people, okay? Okay, all right? It is actually the first thing we gotta do, okay? All right, that's why we're doing this, okay? That's what we're gonna do as many as we can, okay? All over the city, all right? Because we have, first of all, we want us to lead this, okay? Right? So, and let's be honest too, the same parties and parts of the government that were involved in the problem and creating the problem in the first place, we want to make sure that we are actually leading the solutions out of it, right? So that's why it's important to do the work that we're doing, right, which is building support amongst our own community.
Yes.
And absolutely, that from our perspective, we will absolutely have to work not just to change the representatives, but the parties themselves, right? And that's a little bit different, right? So we think about the elections and the politicians get voted, but there are whole organizations that are built, that support, that create, that that really produce these candidates, right? That produce these elected officials. So that work has to be part of this work too, and I'm looking forward to doing that work. And yeah, if you're interested in doing that kind of work, you are in the right place. Yes, please.
Yes, I think my question goes back to you say that inside of Black community, so I have this question.
Yes.
I'm a proud member of the BBB.
Chris, I can't. Mike.
Black baby boomer.
Thanks.
I'm a proud member of Black baby boomer. And we get terrorized online. But okay, what can we do? What can I do? Because when I try to talk to my people, I get shut down. They try to talk over me emotionally, but they're not, dealing with any kind of data. So I just kind of walk away. I don't know if I should keep doing that because they are one of the largest blocks of voting. So I need help. What can I do for us? For the baby boomers.
The boomers. Shout out to Black baby boomers about that, first of all. Let me give y'all, give me the Black baby boomers. I know, first of all, I wouldn't put more importance than needs to be on some of the conversation that goes on online. And, I think like 7% of the country's on Twitter, or less. So one, I just want to put that in context. But two, the question is how can our Black baby boomers get more involved? How can someone who wants to help bring more Black baby boomers into this work, how can we speak to them? What's the right thing to say? What's the right message? Should we, if we face resistance, when we do face resistance, should we just give up? Should we give some time? Right? So I have like an approach where, one, I plant seeds. I don't expect, I try to meet people where they are when I talk to them about this, right? And I always have in my mind that first, I don't expect to, for you to become like I am right now in this conversation, right? There are some things that I may have to leave with you, and you may have to think about on your own, right? So one, the first lesson is be patient with your people. Right? Be patient with us. Okay? The second lesson is you have to come to this work from a place of love to our people too, right? Because we are going through some stuff right now. We have been going through some stuff for a long time. We're really going through some stuff right now. Right? So Black people are going through stuff. Right? So no worries at all. There's no worries at all about the fact that, hey, I might not get it the first time, or, I may not, there may be resistance. There may be resistance, right, to what somebody saying, right? So one, be patient. Two, come from love. Three, though, you're actually the best messenger to talk to the boomers, because I think the boomers will listen to a boomer before they listen to a millennial or a Gen Xer or some combination of that, right? So the messenger matters, right? And I think you're one of the best messengers. And then the last thing I want to say is, I think what you want to do is don't focus so much on the data, like giving them the statistics, right? Even though that's good stuff, but like we know where we are. So I think you want to go from a story. I think you want to personalize what you're telling them and why you're telling them this, right? Don't lead with the facts. Don't lead with the information. Don't lead with that. Don't lead with the, half of Black America, if you add them all up together, it's less than zero. Okay? You don't want to lead with the stats. You want to lead with the story. Okay? You want to make it personal. Is the point. Okay? Make it personal. Okay? The facts and the data we can come to later, but also remember, be patient too. It's not going to happen right there. And come from a place of love too. Okay? That's my advice. There's more we can do though, because we're organized. So almost immediately what came in my mind was, hey, maybe we need to set up something that's just specifically to talk to the boomers. Right? And maybe we need to have a Q&A about the California Reparations Task Force or this topic for the boomers only. Okay? And maybe we need to work to be more creative about how maybe we need to, have like a specific audience that we talk to, right? That way, what the boomers may hear when they come here may be different than what the millennials may hear than the next one. So that's an important, I think, tool or resource that we may be able to create. But those three things, I think, is where you want to start with. And then, yeah, if you need more help, you can work with us directly, because this is, the boomers were right, they're a big part of our politics. And both parties know that. More questions, more thoughts. I do have a question for y'all, and that is, it was one, and I'll just do a show of hands on this one, because this is a fake poll, but one, do you believe, so raise your hand, and you believe that the California Reparations Task Force should be open and responsive to community voices, right? Who doesn't believe that, right? Yeah, who doesn't believe that? Okay. All right. Now, I want to pose this to you. What are some ways in which you think the California Reparations Task Force could be open and responsive to the community voices, right? What are some of the ways in which they could be open, they could be responsive?
I think what you're doing right now. Are you a part of the task force?
No.
So it doesn't make you a part of the task force. You do this all across the state.
That was so I want to answer. One, that was the best thing I heard. Put me in task force. No, don't put me in task force, but I appreciate it. And the response is, do community meetings, right? Do community meetings, right? So instead of me talking to y'all, right, maybe one of those folks should be there talking to y'all, right? One of the task force members, right, should be there so here, right? So that's a great idea. Community. Any other thoughts about?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even like a virtual roundtable or something like that. I mean, some type of something. And if you can't, at least, like folks don't know what they don't know. You know what I'm saying? So if you're not gonna get the word out, or get a flyer out, or get some type of information to know that these conversations are happening, you're just gonna pass you by. So like, I feel like if there's a way we can have like roundtables, so every month or every quarter or every whatever, these conversations are happening. Maybe we can switch it up, one city, this city, that city, or something like that, just so you know, and have a representative present to help answer questions, field answers, and stuff like that. I think it would be helpful just so folks can be involved in what's going on, because not everybody's on social media, not everybody's on the internet. So there needs to be ways that we can do outreach to people who may not be involved in computers or may not be, at least they can know that these conversations are happening. They can join on a conference call line and listen in, pose questions, something to get more people engaged. So.
Good, yeah, we are definitely taking all these ideas. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I would say, maybe billboards, radio commercials, and television commercials. They should definitely be having those starting soon now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great ideas. Other thoughts. How can this task force, how can they reach you, right? And also not just reach, but also be responsive to you, right? Because, I can tell you what's going on, but that's not listening to what you're saying. Right? When you're talking to me, can I hear you? And do I do what you want? Right? Which is a good question. Yeah, no, but these are all I guess these can continue to think about. And then the other question was, what do reparations look like to you? What we call them the right types of reparations proposals now, but to you, what are reparations? What should be in reparations if California does do something? Any thoughts on that? Yes, sir.
I think at a minimum, we need a check, a nice sizable check. And I think for me, when I talk to people about reparations and when I get opposition, I have to explain to them the economic impact slavery had on America, right? People don't realize that the Atlantic slave trade created the most wealth in human history, right? For like 300-400 years of free labor, which makes sense. It was the engine behind the Industrial Revolution in America and in Europe. So today, when we look at Europe, look at America, how great it is and being a superpower, a lot of that was because of the free labor they had. And now today, African Americans are one of the poorest communities. So we look at the history, the facts, and the money situation, it don't even make sense that we should have some type of reparational work for ourselves, right? So I think the very first thing is I think every African American is entitled to a check. Right? He took my grandpa's sweat and equity, which was labor, and he could have run it for himself, but no, he went to a Southern economy, which was a national economy. So cut the check, I'll take it.
Yes, money. Money.
In addition to that, right?
Plus.
I feel like that's important, but I feel like Black people across all generations have been traumatized. Significantly traumatized. We look at what's going on in our impoverished communities, we look at what's going on even in our affluent communities. Folks are traumatized, and some folks don't even know they're traumatized. And as a result of being exposed to generational trauma, I feel that there needs to be some type of way in which we can heal.
Yes.
And I mean that in a culturally responsive way, that them folks that are doing the healing also get paid. And what I mean by that is so that our kids and our kids' kids and so on and so forth, and the children that are not Black can also know an educational piece, you know what I mean? So that there's an understanding of this reparations is to repair, you know what I mean? So it's like to repair the harm that's been done for centuries upon centuries to now, let's go ahead and heal that first, cut the check, of course, but you know what I mean? But also educate people so that they can know whether that's critical race theory, education, whatever that means, in addition to all of these things need to happen, to repair us as a people, just to repair the way in which we think about ourselves. So I'll just leave it there, but yeah, I think that's mandatory.
So I'm gonna add real quick, so it's called post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Dr. Jordan,
I got you. So addressing that, which I think is also very
mandatory.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we got money therapy, we got mental health therapy, we got that's a lot right there. Other thoughts?
Protected
What?
class, we gotta
That's
do the
right.
protected class. We
Protected
need that's
class.
that are not, they're not attacking us and not being responsible for it. And then we need to also, what's the one where the police aren't, they don't have to be held responsible for whatever they do to us?
Qualified.
Yes, qualified immunity. We need that.
Yeah, I just,
So I mean, it's not like.
yo, that's why we in.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we as a people gotta be protected in terms of, you know, what constitutes a hate crime. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, signing is it with the Emmett Till bill? There's the lynching bill, anti-lynching bill. You know, there's so much. I even think what I would even like to do is have, and this is just, you know, my thoughts. I don't know if others have had this thought, and I'll put it out there. Somebody take it and run with it. You know, I don't gotta get the credit, just as long as it happens. What I would like to do is see, we have like a designated, almost like a car registry that almost like how Native American individuals have, where they actually have, hey, I'm this or I'm that, and you identify with that. I feel like there needs to be some type of formalized system that we actually have for ourselves and also have benefits that are attached to it. Like a guaranteed qualified, like, no, I have this, I'm a descendant of American chattel slavery. This, you know, like period. It shouldn't even be a question. You know, I'm sure there will be a lot of people that are trying to jump on that bandwagon to claim their, you know what I mean, but their heritage. But I feel like there's got to be something or some system in play where we actually have some type of designated card, document, form, insignia, something to where it's us. You know what I mean? Because it's only happened to us. So
I'll leave it there. No, that's a lot of feedback, a lot of great talk.
Just to piggyback on his brother, that, he says that people will try to jump in. But like the national level, is the California Task Force just still with Lynch as far as African Americans? I'm not seeing that, but how are they distinguishing? I mean, it's gonna be like, Dr. Garrity's in his book, you know, the 12 years on your birth certificate or something like that.
No, great question. Let me actually come to that question and repeat the question, which is, this is the who's eligible question, right?
Yeah.
For reparations. Okay? This is the who's eligible question, and this is the question that the California Reparations Task Force will have to go through and will have to work through. Okay? This is one of the questions that they're gonna have to go through. And here in California, we have a little bit of an added piece to that too, right? Because not all of us are actually from California, right? I'm not. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. I'm from New York.
And what about the people that moved away?
What about the people
Because
that
that's
left
too
California?
expensive.
Right.
or left the country.
Right. Right. So this is the question that the task force will have to go through. Now, what we did though, because we have an idea of who we think is actually eligible, right? We think that black folks who descend from U.S. slavery, whose ancestors were enslaved in this country by this country, are due reparations from this country. This makes sense, right? So the work that we did to help get this question answered in a healthy way was we had added to the bill before the bill was passed some language that targeted black folks who descend from U.S. slavery. Right? So if you look at the language of the bill now, or the language of the law, it says this is the task force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, or something to that effect. Right? It's, I think it says African American, U.S. slavery descendants, but there's a particular lineage piece to it, and we were really fighting really hard to add that to it because we thought that was really important. So that's how we work to help answer that question. But the task force is going to have to decide. And one of the things that the task force is going to have to decide is not just that question, but also when to deal with that question.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I want to say this one thing too about the July meeting. This July meeting is going to be really, really important. We don't know the date yet, okay? But it's going to be really, really important because one, they're going to decide how often they meet, what they talk about when they meet, when do they deal with these kinds of particular questions, how long do they take to do the work? Do they have to take the full 2 years? No, they don't have to. So do we want, they're gonna decide what pace to go at? Right? How much of the effort needs to be the study, gather evidence part versus how much needs to be the develop the reparations proposals part? Do you do one before the other? Do you do them both at the same time? All kinds of questions, okay? So this July is gonna be really, really important, and I wanna put those ideas to you because your ideas are gonna matter to what actually happens, right? We have this poll up online now. How often should the California Reparations Task Force meet? Monthly, quarterly, weekly, something else? Right?
I think, in all of that, there has to be a commitment to the California Reparations Task Force. And what I mean by that is despite any, pandemic, despite any, economic downturn, what they call in legal code force majeure, any type of random act of God, whatever, that you're committed to still maintaining what you said you were gonna do. And in addition to that, on the economic piece, looking at it, you know, the financial piece that's actually backed by gold, backed by something that is not gonna lose value. You know what I mean? So that way there's no, you know, oh, well, we're not accepting dollar bills anymore.
Once I got reparations,
Yeah, we're not accepting,
you know,
you know what I mean? So that there's no value associated. We did it in name only, and it looked good, and we threw a parade, but y'all ain't really getting it. You know what I mean? So those are some of the thoughts that I think, in terms of question. Yeah, I was like, you okay, bro? Yeah. I thought something was going on.
No, but thank you. So so you brought up a couple of ideas I want to actually touch on with the time we have left. It's about a minute or so. We'll start about 15 minutes out. So we're going to need, and I think you were talking about protections, right? Mm-hmm. So part of what, and you brought up the financial piece, right? They actually all go together. So we have to close the wealth gap, right? Yeah. We have to close the wealth gap. The only way to do that really is with money, right? Wealth, right? You can't educate out of the wealth gap. You can't black business out of the wealth gap. You can't financial literacy out of the wealth gap. You can't home ownership out of the wealth gap. You can't two-parent your way out of the wealth gap. What's the other one? You can't do like the other groups do out of the wealth gap, right? Which is what we tell ourselves to do. Right. So the wealth gap started at the end of slavery, right? It's you know, right? I mean, for lack of a better way to make it simple. And the reason why we have wealth gap today was because we never got reparations at the end of slavery. So it starts there, right? So the only way to fix it is to actually do reparations, right? We talk about what that should look like to us. We definitely want more ideas, but the point I'm trying to make is that the wealth and the protections go together, right? So yes, we want to, we have to close the gap, which right now is about $13 billion. It's around 800,000 per black household, right? Or 200,000-300,000 per person right now, just to close the gap. So one, I think that should be a part of obviously the reparations package, right? But then it's also the protections, right? I don't want to, just put that money right back, into the same account that did this to us in the first place. And also, we don't want no tricks about how, okay, now you got money now we don't take money no more.
It's all Bitcoin.
Yeah, now we only take,
you know what I mean?
Right. Okay. So, but we want those as part of the protections because white folks know very, very well that part of having wealth is protecting them. And they pay a lot of money to have the wealth protected. Is that it don't go down and go up. So the protections have to be part of this. Right? And I'm glad y'all thinking about how to protect what we get to because trust me, there's gonna be all kinds of ways to, all kinds of people trying to do all kinds of things. to take us and separate us from our newfound wealth. Yeah.
Question. I asked this question for a reason. How significant and important is Gavin Newsom, our governor, in this process? Because I catch myself having a little anxiety about the safety of his seat. Because it seems like he's down with the cause.
All of a sudden.
Yeah. No, good question. So the question is about our governor, Gavin Newsom, who actually he signed a reparations bill. He's obviously going up for recall, right?
That makes me nervous.
This year. Okay. So the question is, what threat is that? And his still being in office to his applicants. So legally, the law that created the task force passed in 2020, while he is still governor. So that's law. So anything that changes that will have to either break the law or you have to change the law. So right now the task force is going to have 2 years. That can't change unless we break the law or they change the law. The governor already made his case. He had 5 of the case actually. So he already made his case. I don't think there's anything else in the law that involves him.
So he doesn't have to sign it afterwards? I thought he had to sign it.
No, so let me say two things here. One, and this is a point I still want to make. I'll make it second though. So the first is the governor himself. So the governor, he already made his case, right?
I was about to say, I didn't realize that.
So let me say this though, so we're gonna create reparations proposals at the end, right? Like that's what the job of the task force is, right? Those proposals will not be law. We will have to get those proposals done, okay?
Yes.
Okay? That is a 2024, 2023, and 2024 fight. Okay? If they take the full 2 years to do what they're trying to do, they don't have to take the full 2 years. So that means, snap my fingers, it's 2023. 2 years over. We did it, y'all. We studied the thing. We got a whole list of proposals. We got money. We got protections. We got land on it too. We got a whole marijuana industry too, right? We got all kinds of things. We like no taxes. Oh, great, right? Our job then will be to make those law. Okay. All right. That's going to be our, it's like the video game. We got like levels of the bosses. Okay. That's the fights that we're working towards. Okay.
I thought once the proposal is done, they're going to send it to the legislature and they're going to vote up or down. Oh, sorry, that was misinformation I got.
This is one. We actually fought to change this in the law. We didn't get it. Though. We weren't successful because we realized that hey, we could do all this work. We can have the best proposals, and the California legislature could say, "Well, that's nice."
That was cute.
That was cute. Y'all did that. 2 years doing that. Nice. Hey, we'll get back to it. Okay. Yeah. So what we were fighting is to get language in there that said, hey, the California legislature at least has to consider the proposals. We actually tried to mandate that they pass them, but people told us that no, that's illegal. You can't mandate that they pass something before they even saw it. Right? But they say, but you can require them to consider. That means kick it up in the legislative process, meaning like introduce it, debate it, take votes on it, right? Like make it go forward. We weren't successful in that. So we realized that we now have that fight too. And that's why we want to make sure that we get to the good stuff and like the good proposals fast, but also like in a way that is smart. Because again, we come back to one or two of those bottom sort of issues, right? Even if we love our proposals, we don't have the public support we need yet. Okay? So there's a timing question here too, because do you want proposals right now that are almost certainly going to be rejected? Or do you want to take a year, build your proposals, and build the support that you need to get the proposals done? Or 2 years? Right? That's a tough question, and we're trying to figure that out right now, to be honest with you.
I think, just real quick, in addition to the, reparations task force, there needs to be like a reparations, like community, I don't know what to call it, but something that builds up that support in our community. So while this wheel is spinning, this wheel of building support, building community, making community conversations, stuff like that, education is happening. So that way folks, by the time that time comes, you already, it's just an easy slam dunk yes. Or maybe even a little contested later.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it ain't like you shoot the shot from half court and you don't know if it's gonna go or not. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, this could have a higher likelihood of actually getting passed.
Yeah,
So,
good. I'm glad we got recorded. This is a good idea. Yes, sir.
So the very next thought that came after that is, so are we currently grooming each member of the Assembly and the Senate? That would be the next natural thing to do.
So the question is, are we grooming? Is there grooming? Is there work being done right now? So
That looks like it's really sit down with each member and explain to them what we're trying to do. And over the next 2 years, keep them in the loop about the task force. When it's time to come, it's not just a surprise.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So that's actually, I hope all of y'all just sign up for like our teams and our work, because that's exactly a part of the work that, so those two questions there are, like these two questions on the side here, those are like, those are plan questions, because that's actually, we have a team, one team whose job it is to ensure that the task force open response to community voices. And we have another team whose job is to ensure that the task force gets to the right type of reparations proposals. In the first team, right, in that first group, that's where that work happens. That's where that work will happen, right? Now, obviously, we've been talking about this for the past year and a half, but it's a different thing now, because now we have an actual reparations task force. So that's where that work is happening and will continue to happen. And we would love for you to come and give us a hand, because it's gonna take all of us. It's really gonna take all of us, and we're gonna be doing our part to be in community, and to have these meetings as often as we can. Right? We're also now gonna be on KBE every second Wednesday of the month with Key Matthews on Southern Sacramento at 1 p.m. We're gonna give an update on California Task Force, California Reparations Task Force every month. So you have that touch point too, and if you want to direct people to that too. Hey, y'all always listen to the radio, call Wednesday, second Wednesday, 1 p.m. That's when we have it. But that's where that work is going. It's not just the legislators, right? It's also, there's a lot of coalition building, and also there are also other stakeholders and interests too who are involved, and I want to help everybody. Personally, one of the things that we're working on right now, I think my team, they're watching online right now, so they may be mad at me saying this, but I'm trying. So one of the things that we're working on right now is what we're calling a community engagement plan. And it's really our ideas and our recommendations for how this task force should be engaged in our community. And it also has a lot in about how we're going to be engaged in our community too. But this community plan has a lot of the ideas that we heard here, and some stuff that is not there that we want to add that we heard from you today. And again, it's about the question of how should this task force engage with the community? Should they be doing radio? Should they be doing community? Right? What we want to do is go to the next meetings with that plan and say, this is the plan that y'all need to adopt. This is what you need to do. And we're going to need your help to actually make that happen. And make it good. I do want to take any other questions. I don't want to take too much longer because it is Saturday, and I'm going to be taking you Saturday. I appreciate it. Yes.
But I was asking you, just into the whole first task.
Okay.
One of the things, one of the comments was, it's possibly sometimes reduced on Saturday because we're missing communication. So I thought that was really a good thing to consider.
Yes. So,
And recording.
Yes.
You know, so you can watch it at a later time, but you can't when they do have it, because if you miss it,
It's done.
then it's gone.
So it is online now, and now it's also on YouTube now. So I'm glad y'all talking about this. Okay, so one, it is online now. The task force has a website inside of the DOJ's website. Two, the California Department of Justice puts the first meeting cut up in 3 parts, that is 6+ hours long, okay, crazy long, and we broke it up into 3 pieces, and it's on YouTube now. We actually streamed the meeting live on ETM while it was happening also. All right, so we're gonna continue to do that. All right, so you'll have it, and we'll also send out the links in our email too, right? But let me say one thing, and you think. So that's an answer to a question of how should this task force be open and responsive to community voices, right? Hold meetings on Saturdays, right? Or during off work hours, right? Yeah. Maybe a hybrid in-person and virtual too, right? So you don't necessarily need to have internet access, right? When during the meetings is the public comment? Because the public comment for the first meeting was an hour 6. Okay, so that means you had to sit there.
Yeah.
For 6 hours. Who can do that?
Yeah.
Besides me, okay? Working from home, all right? Right? Now I'm happy to do it, but I'm one person, right? So maybe we need to have the public comment in the beginning. Maybe we need to have only public comment meetings. All we do is take public comment. Maybe we need to take public comment outside of the meetings. Right? Maybe we can split the public comment up into 2 pieces, have one in front and one in the back. Right? Maybe we shouldn't have 6-7 hour meetings at all. Maybe we should open the meetings up for 48 hours. That way we give as many people a chance to come in and give some sort of comment to the meeting and to the task force as possible, right? All kinds of ideas. There's one thing that I think I'll just put this before you now, like there's a challenge here, right? 10 meetings, 9 now. Right. 8 after the July one, where we still aren't, we're still not doing any study, we're still not doing any proposal development yet, right? So you got 8, you got 2 years, okay? Or a little bit less than 2 years. Should there be more meetings than that?
Right. I think it should be.
Right.
I think it should be, yeah. Right.
Should there be more meetings than just another 8? Okay, is 8 enough for us? Right. Maybe we need to have some unofficial meetings where, you know what I'm saying, where it's just, 1 or 2, task force members come and talk to the community, right? And it's not, it's not bound by all of the rules and laws of Open Meetings Act and all that stuff, right? Really important questions. Really important questions, and these will be decided and discussed at the July meeting. So your ideas, your thoughts, are very detailed.
Yeah, I want to say, if you go to the DOJ's website, you can subscribe to the email authority task force. So you go to the website, go to the Reparations Task Force, click on the link, and then after you email, you input it in there, and then send you the subscription verification, verify it, and every time there's an update from the task force, you get an email. So that's one way to keep yourself good.
And same with us, we have all of the link at the bottom of the fact sheet here has a couple of ways to get on our newsletter as well, because we're doing it too. So you can go to CJEC official at official.org, CJECofficial.org to sign up for the newsletter, or there's a bit.ly link there, you can just copy that and put it in. Either way it works, you'll get on the newsletter, and we will be sending out, as soon as we know when the next meeting is, obviously we're going to send that out. We'll probably send something out before then too, because the videos of the meetings are available, so we want to make sure that people have, the information, make sure people have fact sheet. And we want to create a way to get ideas too, right? And then also in the newsletter, what you'll get is a link that will invite you to join one of the 2 teams that we have organized. And one of the teams, the only job of that team is to ensure that the task force is open and responsive to community voices, right? That's the first thing. And then that second team's job is to make sure that we get to the right types of reparations proposals, okay? As we will help them define the right types of reparations proposals. Other questions, other thoughts before we wrap up? I know we are a little bit over, but I did want to give you all time and, just be available.
I just think, just last week,
Yeah.
just in everything that we do, I think we should question everything. Not everything has to be, from a Eurocentric frame or point of view, such as like the Robert's rules and all this and that. When we have this is our thing. And we should be able to construct it in the way that's beneficial to us. And having these folks with just 10 meetings, now 9, I feel like they may need to have some staff or some help or some runners, some people that can help them run. Because I see legislators up here, they have bill package priorities. They have their own budget package priorities that they have to make sure that they're getting, so I don't want them to put this on the back burner and they only got 2 years to do it. So it's like, okay, this needs to be a priority and this needs to be a commitment to making sure that by the end of 2 years, we actually do have some real sound proposals that actually have teeth in them that can actually benefit us as a people.
We want to see them along the way, we just want to see it.
At the end, exactly, we want to see the progression.
I haven't seen the
The progression of it, right.
No, thank you. So, just so y'all know, I have, like, those ideas are exactly the kind of ideas that we want to get, and this is exactly why we are doing it, right? And the point you're making about questioning everything, also us doing this from our own culture, I don't think we'll win if we don't do it like that.
Right.
Like we won't get to where we want to get to, so we gotta, it's necessary. I mean, yes, it's
Yeah, one final comment, I want to speak to her eligibility question. So, European white folks, they created something called a one drop rule a long time ago. Reverse that, so, you have a way how you can measure, you do 23andMe ancestry, you got 1%, you're eligible. That's an exception. I was going to get the qualified for reparations.
Oh, you're saying like everybody can be qualified?
So she was asking a question earlier, how do you figure out who's qualified?
Oh,
Who's
yeah, that
eligible
was-
for reparations?
Yeah, that
I
was.
thought back in the day, it has to go to one drop.
Right.
If you're one drop of black, you were black. So we're gonna take that and own that when it comes to getting these reparations. I ain't like
so that question is gonna be one, I think, the most interesting question that we.
I thought Derek already put it.
Yeah, so Derek has, we mentioned, the name Derek a couple times, so we wanna give this man just Dr. William Derek Jr. Professor Duke, MIT, he's one of the leading reparations scholars. He was invited to testify at the 2019 Juneteenth hearings on HR 40. So he gave testimony there. His book, by the way, is right there. From he had to Equality. As a matter of fact, I think that's a part of the prize. Yeah, we have that. So that's one of the prizes. And I have a photo. So I can't even it. So in his book, he lays out a framework or a way to decide who's eligible for reparations. Right? 2 criteria really. One, you have to have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in the United States and by the United States. Right? So that just makes sense, right? And then the second part, and this is an and, not or, the and, you have to be somebody who self-identifies as Black, African American, right? Something like that. You put those 2 together, right? You're a circle around that, yeah. And I think we are well on our way to answering that question in a healthy way. And that's why we have that second team, right? Because that's one of the things we think will be in the right types of reparations proposals, right? But we definitely want to hear ideas about all the stuff. I do want to wrap it up, because I know my team here is giving me the wrap it up button. Yeah, wrap it up. So we do have a raffle or 2 or 3. Okay. I was supposed to ask you some questions or to help decide who's gonna win the raffle. Okay. So, how many items do we have?
So we have
Questions?
6 questions and 6 items. So
Okay.
based on who answers the questions, we're gonna pick it out of the bag here.
Okay.
So you can ask the question and then we'll pick it
Okay.
out the bag. So if
So
you wanna,
yes,
maybe you wanna start to the right and then move around.
so I'm just gonna put the question
We
out,
can
and
raise your hand and
whoever has the answer first, whoever you could,
Raise your hand.
yeah, let's do first hand up. First hand up with the right answer.
Right.
So, all right, so 6 questions, and why don't we limit one win per person?
Yeah.
Maybe those 6.
You can't answer all the answers.
The first question is really simple. How many people, and y'all have to help me get the person who really answers. How many people are on the California assessments? I got her here, but yes, how many?
9.
All right, 9, here we go. All right, you want a fancy raffle ticket? No, that's good. So you get ticket out there, and then you'll go get it.
What'd you get? T-shirt.
So you want a free ETM media t-shirt?
Here's your ETM member. Not yet, but
Not yet. All right, next question. Name 2 people on the California Reparations Task Force.
Stephen Bradford and Reggie Jones.
There you go. Oh, congratulations. Round of applause. All right. And your prize is?
A Mary Kay gift. It's all good. Like, you know, Mom.
Next question. Oh, no. What bill was created to make the California Reparations Task Force? Uh-oh.
Oh, that's a good one.
AB. Come on, 31.
What is AB what? AB, say the whole.
Say the whole
AB.
AB 3120.
There you go. Congratulations. And we didn't even say that.
I was like, wait, did she miss it? Almost.
All right. Yeah, we didn't even say that here today, so good.
AB something, we got that right there.
It was close.
I think I'm gonna give this to you.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Anybody wants a book? I
You
have
want
two copies.
We
Oh,
got
no. I'll take the book, baby. I would like to donate to
Congratulations. All right. So she'll probably think.
You were giving a low. You know, I want to.
I have two copies.
I'll take it, bro. I promise you.
I haven't seen it. How about this? I can read it first. I'll give it to you.
That's a free PDF, but it looks like the text.
Next question. What are the minimum number of meetings the task force is required to have?
10.
Yes, sir. Congratulations. Go ahead. Big in there. 2 or 3 more raffles.
American Slaves Incorporated Renaissance Land Book.
All right, there you go. You got a book. I want to thank you for putting these raffles together. That's Kim for giving us a hand. And the last question is. The last question is, who is the governor of California, and how many appointees was he able to appoint to the California Reparations Task Force?
We didn't answer.
Oh, okay.
So who is the governor? Who is the governor, and how many kids did he get? She's a
She answered, we all answered. I mean, you know.
There you go. Perfect. Big shout out to Dr. Kayla Harris as well for joining us. Appreciate you, Dr. Nice, nice. All right, that's all the questions. One, I want to thank everybody for joining us just really appreciate you. And then two, make sure you sign up for the newsletter because you're going to get, so you can sign up there at the front, or go to CJEC official. All the information is on the fact sheet at the bottom right, I believe. What you'll get is an invitation to join our work directory. Pleasure. See you soon.
Okay.
No, man, no, it's so good. I'm trying to rock because like, bro, yeah, no, bro, because I want to sit in the chair, you know, that's just what I want to work. Okay, all right, I'll do that.
Are we good? Yes. Are we good?
Were you
Here in
involved with
Sacramento.
that, with California? See, I'm trying to.
Flowers,
Places.